In October 2020, a movement erupted from the heart of Nigeria that captured the world's attention. It was not the first protest in Nigeria's history, nor was it the first time young people took to the streets, demanding justice. But this time, it felt different. It was not just about the anger. It was about exhaustion from the years of systemic abuse, corruption, and the terrifying realization that those meant to protect you could be the very ones to fear. Welcome to this documentary on #ENDSARZ. The genesis, exodus, and present day of the protest. In this presentation, we'll explore how a once respected police unit transformed into a symbol of oppression, how the youth mobilized in a way that defied traditional leadership, and how the aftermath of the protest left lasting scars on Nigerian streets and in the hearts of its people. To fully understand #ENDSARZ, we must go back not only to the protests of 2020, but to the very beginning. What led to the creation of SARS? How did the anti-robbery squad become synonymous with extortion, brutality, and fear? The answers lie in the story of Nigeria itself, a nation grappling with its identity, its governance, and the relationship between power and the people. The genesis, the root of #EndSARZ. Let's go back to the time when Lagos ceased to become the capital of Nigeria in December 1991, when the capital was moved to Abuja by then head of state General IBB following the 1990 Gideon Oka bloody coup, which resulted into the deaths of many military personnel, including the CSO, claimed the life of Colonel UK Bello. After the coup, it became clear that Lagos was not a safe place. Moreover, the military government was preparing to hand over power to civilian administration by 1993. The relocation of the capital left Lagos security architecture somehow vulnerable, and these developments, along with unfolding events, led to the creation of SARS in 1992. The Special Anti-Robbery Squad was founded in late 1992 by former police commissioner Simon Danladi Medinda. The inciting events that spurred the formation of SARS included the killing of Colonel Ezra Dimdam Rindam of the Nigerian Army by police officers at a checkpoint in Lagos, September 1992. Following their arrest, a police strike, and a subsequent crime wave. When news of Rindam's death and the police complacency reached the army, soldiers were dispatched into the streets of Lagos to apprehend police officers. The Nigerian police withdrew from checkpoints, security areas, and other critical points, with some officers resigning while others fled for their lives. The absence of police for 2 weeks led to a significant spike in crime. In response, SARS was formed with an initial force of 15 men and 2 picket station wagons. At the time, 3 police anti-robbery squads, the first established in 1984, were already in operation. So Medinda decided to distinguish his unit from the existing teams. He named his squad the Special Anti-Robbery Squad. After 2 weeks of dialogue, the Nigerian Army and Nigerian Police Force reached an understanding, and official police duties resumed in Lagos. In November 1992, the SARS unit was officially commissioned in Lagos. SARS became one of the 14 units in the Force Criminal Investigation and Intelligence Department, FCIID, established to detain, investigate, and prosecute individuals involved in violent crimes such as armed robbery and kidnapping. As a consequence of these developments, many security force headquarters were transferred to Abuja. Operational tactics of early SARS. In the early days, combat-ready SARS officers operated undercover in plainclothes and unmarked vehicles without any government insignia, and they did not carry any arms in public. Their primary purpose was to monitor radio communications and facilitate arrest of criminals, including notorious groups like the 36 Lions Gang. Numerous successful operations were carried out early on, A common thread in these operations was the identification of prostitution hotspots. One SARS officers noted that 75% of Lagos jobs were from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And if a man in his 20s was seen spending time in an hotel during these hours, it was considered either a suspect or a beneficiary of criminal activities. These raids not only yielded material gains, but also profited valuable intelligence, with some local youths often serving as informants for SARS. Additionally, some SARS officers would often wear civilian clothes, mufti, to blend into society, much like detective units in America, thereby discreetly infiltrating into the communities. This strategy proved effective, and the success of this operation spread to various states over time. Emergence of Operation Sweep and military involvement. By 1996, the military administrator of Lagos State, Millard, also known in the newspapers, resumed office, functioning as a governor by appointment, rather than by election. Political tensions and civil unrest in Lagos intensified, and the security concerns escalated. In response, military councils established another security unit called Operation Sweep. Initially, Operation Sweep worked in collaboration with SARS. However, it differed that it comprised officers from the National Army and Air Force who worked together to combat crime in Lagos. Prominent detention centers such as Panti in Sabo and Alagbon in Obalende became widely used, and areas such as Area C and Area F were notable for detentions in Lagos. Operation Sweep primarily used vehicles such as the Hilux and military Rangers pickup jeeps. On many occasions, Operation Sweep officers joined SARS in joint raids and special operations. Eventually, when the civilian administration took office in 1999, the newly elected governor of Lagos State, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, reformed Operation Sweep into the Rapid Response Squad, which is now deployed by the police command as military personnel return to the barracks. While SARS experienced tremendous growth, it also faced multiple serious challenges. Reforms and institutional changes, 2009 to 2019. In 2009, the Nigerian Minister of Justice and Attorney General convened a national committee on torture to examine allegations on torture and unlawful killings, but little progress was made. In October 2010, then-President Goodluck Jonathan allocated 71 billion naira, approximately $196 million, for police reforms. In 2016, the Inspector General of the Nigerian Police Force announced broad reformations to address SARS units' use of excessive force and failure to adhere to the due process. Despite repeated promises of reform and accountability, reports of human rights violations by SARS continued to mount. In 2015, the police established a Complaint Response Unit, CRU, to process public complaints. However, no SARS officer has since been held accountable for acts of torture, ill treatment of detainees, or unlawful killings. In 2017, Nigerians launched a social media campaign using the hashtag ENDSARZ to document abuse and extortion by SARS officers, demanding the complete overhaul or disbandment of the unit. In December 2017, the Inspector General announced plans to reorganize the SARS unit. Then, on the 14th of August 2018, the acting president, Yemi Osinbajo, ordered an immediate overhaul of SARS, following reports on the human rights violations. He instructed the Inspector General of Police, Ibrahim Kopto Idris, to reform SARS and conduct an independent investigation into persistent complaints and abuses. On the 21st of January 2019, IGP Mohammed Adamu ordered the immediate decentralization of SARS. Since its inception, the unit had been centralized at the force headquarters in Abuja. Decentralization also meant that the DIG of the Force Criminal Investigations Department and state commissioners of police will be held accountable for the actions of SARS. This move was viewed as a politically motivated move, especially since the president, Muhammadu Buhari, upon returning to Nigeria for medical treatment, was reportedly misinformed about developments achieved by acting President Osinbajo regarding SARS. Buhari's decision to revert SARS to the status quo further exaggerated tensions with Nigerians' youth. The Exodus, the rise of the protest. The spark that ignited the #ENDSARZ movement occurred on the 3rd of October 2020, when a video resurfaced online showing a SARS officer dragging 2 young men out of a car in Ughelli, Delta State. In the video, one of the men was shot and left bleeding on the roadside. Although similar brutality had been captured before, this video triggered a national uprising because Nigerians had grown tired of remaining silent. The outrage was immediate and fierce, fueled by a generation that had grown up with the internet and social media, and which was no longer willing to rely on traditional media outlets that downplayed police violence. Although the #ENDSARZ was not new, it exploded globally within hours. What started as an online outrage quickly spilled into the streets. On October 8th, 2020, protests erupted in Lagos and soon spread like wildfire into the cities across Nigeria: Abuja, Ibadan, Port Harcourt, Enugu, and beyond. The protesters were mostly young people, such as students, entrepreneurs, artists, tech workers, among others.
Not tomorrow, today.
United, not by political affiliations, but by a shared frustration with systematic injustice. They didn't need a formal leader. Social media influencers, activists, and everyday Nigerians organically coordinated protest, raising funds, sharing safety tips, and organizing legal aids for arrested demonstrators. One of the most remarkable aspects of the #ENDSARZ movement was its structurelessness. There were no figureheads, no political parties pulling the strings. This made it very difficult for the government to suppress the movement through the usual tactics of intimidation or co-opting leaders. The decentralized nature of the protest was both its strength and eventually its vulnerability. At the heart of the protest were 5 simple demands. Number 1, immediate release of all arrested protesters. Justice and compensation for victims of the police brutalities. Independent bodies to oversee the investigation and prosecution of police misconduct. Psychological evaluation and retraining of all disbanded SARS officers. Increased police salaries to reduce the temptation of corruption. These demands were very clear, reasonable, and achievable. But instead of addressing them, the government responded with a mix of dismissive rhetoric and violent crackdowns. The police fired tear gas, water cannons, and live bullets at peaceful protesters. Yet the crowds only grew larger and more determined. In Lagos, demonstrators gathered at the now iconic Lekki toll gate, transforming it into a symbol of resistance. The atmosphere was electric. Protesters sang, danced, held vigils, and waved the Nigerian flag with pride. There were no political banners, just a sea of green and white, reflecting a rare moment of national unity. The protests were not just about SARS anymore. They became a referendum on bad governance, corruption, unemployment, and a failing system that had betrayed its own young people. Artists such as Fowles, Runtown, Davido, Burna Boy, and Wizkid lent their voices to the cause, amplifying the message to an international audience. Celebrities worldwide like Beyonce, Kanye West, Rihanna, and even Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey joined in solidarity, making it impossible for the Nigerian government to ignore the growing pressure. But with the global attention came fear. Fear from those in power. The government, already uncomfortable with the scale of the protest, grew increasingly desperate to regain control. What followed would mark to be one of the darkest days in Nigeria's recent history. The Lekki toll gate shooting, a turning point. On the evening of October 20th, 2020, peaceful protesters gathered at Lekki toll gate, waving Nigerian flags and singing the national anthem. They believed that patriotism would protect them. But as night fell, the government declared a curfew, and without warning, the lights at the toll gate were cut. The CCTV cameras were mysteriously removed, and in the darkness, armed soldiers arrived. What happened next was chilling. The government opened fire on unarmed protesters.
They are releasing fire. They are releasing fire.
Videos circulated online showing people scrambling for cover, some wounded, others dying.
Everybody look at this. These are the bullets that were falling. They were falling by our side that we're dodging bullets.
One on-team video showed a young man with a blood-soaked Nigerian flag, an image that would soon become etched into the global consciousness as a symbol of the massacre.
We have not recorded any fatality as against the widespread circulation on social media.
The government initially denied the incident ever happening, calling it fake news, but the evidence was overwhelming. Witnesses, survivors, and even international organizations like the Amnesty International confirmed that lives were lost that night. The government's attempt to gaslight an entire nation only fueled more outrage, both at home and abroad. The Lekki Tollgate shooting marked the climax of the #ENDSARZ protest. The movement, which had become fueled by hope and unity, was now drenched in grief and betrayal. The protest slowly dwindled, not because the people gave up, but because the government had shown it was willing to use little force against its own citizens. However, the spirit of ENDSARZ didn't die at Lekki. It transformed. It became more than a protest. It became a movement etched into the fabric of Nigeria's history, a testament to the power of the people and a reminder of the price of freedom. As the protests faded from the streets, Nigeria was left to grapple with the aftermath. The question now was, what changed? Did the sacrifices of those who marched, chanted, and bled led to the real transformation? In the next section, we'll explore the present-day reality of Nigeria after #ENDSARZ, the promises made, the promises broken, and the enduring legacy of the movement.
We're from the block where it rains, where we create barricades, keep our position away. That's why we strap with the case. Don't get kidnapped from your place, cause it could happen today, not knowing how to behave.
The present day, life after the protest. When the smoke cleared after the #ENDSARZ protest, Nigeria found itself at a critical crossroads. The once bustling streets filled with chants, flags, and youthful energy fell silent. Yet a lingering question persisted. What has changed? In the immediate aftermath, the Nigerian government acted swiftly, not to address the demands, but to control the narrative. President Muhammadu Buhari, in the national broadcast following the Lekki Tollgate shooting, delivered a speech that many found cold, dismissive, and lacking in empathy. Instead of acknowledging the pain and loss suffered by Nigerians, the government focused on condemning the protest, warning against subversive elements, and emphasizing the importance of law and order. A response that felt like a slap in the face. Under mounting domestic and international pressure, the government announced the formation of judicial panels of inquiry across various states to investigate cases of police brutality. On paper, this signaled progress. However, the reality proved far more complex. Many panels faced delays, interference, and a lack of genuine commitment. In some states, victims who bravely came forward were re-traumatized by a system designed to protect perpetrators. Although the Lagos State Judicial Panel confirmed that a massacre occurred at Lekki, the government swiftly dismissed key findings as exaggerated or inaccurate, further deepening public distrust. Legal and institutional changes, or lack thereof. Despite promises, structural issues within the Nigerian police force remain largely unaddressed. Although SARS was disbanded again, its officers were reabsorbed into other units with the same mindsets and methods. In effect, it was the same problem under a different name. Police brutality did not vanish. It merely evolved, remaining prevalent in daily Nigerian life. Moreover, the government's response exposed a deeper issue: the criminalization of dissent. Activists, lawyers, and ordinary citizens who played key roles during the protest faced harassment, surveillance, travel bans, and frozen bank accounts. The state sent a clear message: we are watching. One notable case was that of DJ Switch, a Nigerian artist who live-streamed the Lekki tollgate shooting. Although her bravery turned her into an international symbol of truth, she was forced into hiding after receiving life-threatening warnings. Many other activists experienced similar intimidation, effectively silencing voices that once roared with defiance. The psychological and social aftermath. Beyond the legal and political landscapes, #ENDSARZ left deep emotional scars on the Nigerian physique. The haunting images of blood-stained flags and the sounds of gunfire during peaceful protests remain etched into the collective memory of a generation. For many young Nigerians, #EndSARS was their first encounter with the brutal reality of state power. It shattered illusions, exposed the fragility of their rights, and sparked an awakening. Conversation about governance, human rights, and civic responsibility became increasingly common throughout Nigerian society. The movement inspired a wave of youth political participation, with many believing that change must come from within the system. New political movements, voter registration drives, and grassroots organizations emerged, fueled with the same desire that drove people into the streets in 2020, the hope for a better Nigeria. Artists, musicians, and filmmakers began incorporating themes of resistance and social justice into their work. Songs like Burna Boy's 2010-20 became anthems of remembrance, ensuring that events of #EndSARS would not be forgotten. Nigerian pop culture, celebrated globally for its vibrancy, took on more political edge as the nation continued to grapple with its wounds. #EndSARS on the global scale. Internationally, #EndSARS forced the world to confront uncomfortable truths about Nigeria. Countries and organizations that had long ignored human rights abuses in Nigeria were compelled to respond. The United Nations, the European Union, and several foreign governments issued statements condemning the violence, highlighting the power of global solidarity and amplifying local struggles. Despite the criticism for spreading misinformation, social media platforms proved essential for activism. The #EndSARS protest demonstrated how digital spaces can be used to organize, mobilize, and hold those in power accountable, evolving into a global cry for justice. It is easy to view the lack of tangible reforms as a failure of #EndSARS. However, movements are not always measured by immediate victories. Historical moments such as the US Civil Rights Movement, the Arab Spring, and South Africa's anti-apartheid struggle faced setbacks and losses, but planted seeds that eventually grew. #EndSARS did the same for Nigeria. It exposed systemic flaws, shattered the culture of silence surrounding police brutality, and ignited a fire that remains difficult to extinguish. Even if the government pretends to have moved on, the people have not. The memory of those days in October 2020 endures as a reminder that change is possible, even if it comes slowly. Conclusion: reflecting on the legacy. #EndSARS was not merely a protest, it was a movement. A defining moment when ordinary Nigerians stood up and declared, enough is enough. Though it was imperfect and did not achieve all the goals, it awakened a nation, reminding both Nigeria and the world that the voices of the people are powerful, even in the face of violence. The legacy of #EndSARS lives not only in the stories of those who marched or in the lives of those lost at Lekki Tollgate, but also in the conversations in homes, schools, and parliaments. It is evident in the courage of young Nigerians who refuse to be silenced, and in the realization that democracy is not solely about elections, it is about accountability, justice, and the steadfast belief that a better Nigeria is possible. As we close this chapter, let us remember, movements never die. They live on in the hearts of those who dare to hope, to live, and to believe. Thank you for watching.